University Transfer Center. And I'm going to share screen with y'all and bring up my slides. I will warn you, I have 70 slides to talk through because I have a lot of information I want to share about the CSU application, the UC application, and the personal insight questions. So forgive me if I move a little quickly through these slides, but I know your time is valuable and I want to make sure to give you all this good information that you need. So the presentation is about 75 minutes long, and then I'm going to leave about 15 minutes at the end for questions. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have as we move through the content of the slides. If you have a question about the slide that we're looking at, please go ahead and use the chat. I have my chat open on my screen so I can see your questions as they come in, and I can pause and answer your questions. If you have questions related to other topics that aren't related to the slide that we're looking at, please write those down and keep those for the end. And then at the very end, we can make sure that your questions are answered. Any questions you have about your applications at all. And I do ask that you remain muted. That way we don't hear each other's background noise. And let's go ahead and jump in. So first, I want to congratulate you all, because if you're here, that means you're in your final year at community college, you're working on your applications, and you're ready to think about transferring. That light at the end of the tunnel is shining bright for you. So it's an exciting place to be at, and I know good things are ahead of all of you, and really our goal is to help you have a smooth and successful transfer to your university. But I want you to think of this final year as a process. So it starts with this application that we're going to be talking about, and then it carries on into the spring term. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, that this application process actually carries on into the spring. So I want you to be aware of that. And I also want to encourage you to reach out to your University Transfer Center staff and your counselors at your college when you have any questions about these applications. I know that, that these applications can bring some stress into your life, some added stressors, because you're already busy with your coursework and your midterms, and then you have these applications to fill out. And we know that you've worked so hard to get to where you are right now. You've taken the right classes, gotten the right grades. And so these applications are so important because you want to make sure you fill them out accurately and correctly. So I want to give you a few tips that might help minimize your stress a little bit. First is get everything that you need to fill out your applications before you get started. And we're going to talk about what you need to fill out your apps in just a minute. Second, I recommend that you take time to work on these applications. Carve out different periods of time to work on them. Don't try to rush through them in one afternoon just so you can get them submitted. We really want you to be thoughtful and careful with your inputs on your applications, and don't rush to submit them. There's no need to get them out today. But I also recommend not waiting till the last minute to submit, because what we have seen historically with both the CSU and UC application, those last few days before the deadline of November 30th, those platforms start operating a lot more slowly because they're being flooded with users, because you've got high school applicants on there, you've got community college or transfer applicants on there. And so I don't recommend waiting to the last minute. It can be a lot more stressful if you do, because they can move a lot more slowly. It can be harder to get logged in. There's all these little glitches and issues that can arise if you wait. I also recommend getting all your questions answered before submitting your applications, because once you've submitted, there are a lot of areas to the application that you can't go in and make changes to. So what you will need to fill out your applications, and this is for both your CSU and UC applications, you want to make sure you have unofficial transcripts of all the colleges that you've attended. So this is any college or university. Unofficial transcripts are helpful if you have them printed out, because then you can kind of check off as you've noted your classes on your applications. If you have your high school transcript, that is helpful as well. And then also if you have any AP exams or IB exams, having that transcript handy is also helpful when you're entering those sections of the application in. If you have a social security number, you need to have that number handy. If you do need to know your citizenship status. You'll need a method of payment to submit your application. So most students choose to pay by credit card. It's usually the easiest way to pay, but you can also submit a check, pay by check if you choose. You'll need to know annual income, and this would be your parents' annual income if you're a dependent, or your income if you're independent. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The CCC ID and campus ID, the CCC ID is optional. You do not need to have that community college ID number, and I'll show you that on the application where it says that that's optional. But you do need to know your college ID number. So whatever community college you're at, you do have an ID number there, and you're going to need to enter that in if you're earning an associate degree for transfer, and I'll show you that slide in a minute. And then lastly, if you are applying into an EOP program, then you will need your parents' employment background and 2 letters of recommendation for the Cal State Apply application. There's a specific EOP application in the Cal State Apply application where you would need these 2 additional pieces of information. And once we start diving into this Cal State Apply application information, we're going to talk more about EOP. So Cal State Apply, now this is the website. We're going to talk about the CSU application first. And so you will be using Cal State Apply to apply to any CSU campus. And I'm going to drop this web link in the chat for you all. So it's calstate.edu to go to Cal State Apply. And we're talking about the application for fall 23 right now. So you're going to want to make sure you're choosing the right year that you're applying for, the right cycle. And then go ahead and start by clicking Apply Now. Now, there's a browser tip for you all. So I would really encourage you to use Chrome or Firefox as your browser. We have seen some issues before with Safari and Edge. Internet Explorer is not recommended. There have been browser issues in the past with Internet Explorer where information doesn't get saved into this in certain areas. So I do recommend using Chrome or Firefox as your browser for this application. Now, once you start the application, you're actually going to start by creating an account within Cal State Apply. And I want y'all to double check that you're making sure that you're applying for the right cycle. So if you're applying for fall 23, you're applying for the 23-24 cycle, and we want to make sure that states that on the left-hand column there. Some CSU campuses are actually still admitting for spring of 23. So I just want to make sure you're not applying for the spring 22 or the spring 23 cycle. So make sure you're choosing the fall 23 cycle there. And then you're going to start by clicking Create an Account. This is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to enter in your name and then an email address. And a tip on the email address, use an email address that you check often. And this would be your primary personal email address that you have notifications popping up on your phone for or easy access to, because you are going to keep your eye on that email because you will be receiving emails from your universities, and we don't want you to miss one of those. I've had students in the past that thought it would be creative to create a new email address just for their university applications. I don't recommend that because what I've seen is that they stop checking those emails and they miss a critical email in the spring, and then they are disqualified because of that. So choose an email that you check often. Now, username and password, you're going to be choosing a username and password. I want you to write this down somewhere where you will not be able to forget it, because you will be having to log back into this application in the future, and you will log in after you've submitted it in November. You're going to be logging in again in January to update your application. So you need to have that username and password handy, and we'll talk about that January academic update in a little bit. After you've created that username and password, you're going to be directed to the extended profile, and it's very important that you set up the extended profile accurately. So for you all, you're going to be choosing first bachelor's degree, most likely, if you're going for your first bachelor's degree at the university. So you'll make the first selection there for your degree goal. And then when it asks which of the following describes your current educational status, you're going to make sure that you choose either the second or the third option. Now, the second option is if you're transferring from a California community college and you're earning an associate degree for transfer. And that could be an AAT or an AST at your community college. If you are earning one of those degrees, it's very important to check the second circle. If you're not earning an associate degree for transfer, no worries at all. For certain majors, they just don't have a good associate degree for transfer option. And in that case, you'd be checking the third option here, which is transferring from a community college or four-year institution. Now, if you do choose the associate degree for transfer option, you're going to get a pop-up box that occurs that's going to ask you to enter in the community college that you're attending or that you're going to be earning your degree at, and your ADT program, so your major in your ADT. If you're earning more than one associate degree for transfer, you can indicate that as well. So you can actually add 2 or 3 associate degrees for transfer in here. Or maybe it's just 2. It says enter up to 2. So you can enter 2 ADTs in there if you're earning more than one. And we do want you to make sure that you're recording those ADTs properly in here, because this actually connects to later parts of the application. And if you don't have your associate degrees for transfer noted in here, you're not going to get those perks and benefits associated with your associate degree for transfer. Now, if you have worked on this application before in a previous cycle, you actually will have the option of importing your data from the previous cycle into this application. And you can choose start reapplication if you in order to make that selection. If you do decide to do the import, just know it takes a little bit of time. The CSU guidance is to log out after selecting the import and wait for an email confirmation that the import has been completed. You can also choose to go in and start the application over from scratch if you prefer to do that. Now, if you haven't submitted an application before, you're going to be directed right into the choose a campus or add a program screen. And you have to start by adding in at least one campus that you're going to be applying to and the major that you're going to be applying into at that campus. So you can find your schools by typing in the name here, but I'll warn you, if you're looking for Cal Poly SLO, you're not going to find them by typing in San Luis Obispo, unfortunately. Cal Poly SLO is identified in this application as Cal Poly Undergraduate. And there's also Cal Poly Pomona and Cal Poly Humboldt now. So you're going to have 3 Cal Polys to sort through to find Cal Poly Undergraduate. But you want to make sure under the campus name that you're choosing the right Cal Poly that you actually want to apply into. A tip for you, the easiest way I think to find campuses is to click on the filters box, and then you can do a search campus, and you'll see all the CSU campuses come up down there on the list. You can check the box for the campus that you're interested in, and then it'll pull up that campus list only. So for Cal Poly SLO, I think that's really the easiest way to do it. And then once you find your school and you see the list of majors there, you're going to click on the check or the plus sign, and it'll turn into a check mark. And that means that you've indicated that's the major that you want to apply into at that specific campus. Now, if you get a pop-up when you do that says dissimilar program chosen, this means that in the extended profile, you indicated that you're earning an associate degree for transfer at your community college. And this pop-up is saying that your associate degree for transfer is not deemed to be similar to the CSU major you're applying into. Now, this can be an issue for certain impacted campuses like Cal State Long Beach or San Diego State. For Cal Poly SLO, we know that they don't accept most ADTs. So you're going to get this dissimilar program chosen pop-up box for most majors at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And with them, in this case, you're just going to click yes and move on back into the application and know that this is not an issue for Cal Poly. However, for other campuses, this could be a problem. So we do want you to investigate it a little bit further. We want you to use a website that's provided by Cal State Apply. It's the Associate Degree for Transfer Major and Campus Search. You're going to put in your major, your community college, and the CSU campus that you're applying into. And then it'll tell you if your ADT is deemed to be similar as that major at the campus that you're applying into. Now, it's important to note that you also have to choose the correct emphasis or concentration for that major at the campus as indicated on this website in order to get the benefits of your ADT. So if you're applying into psychology at San Diego State, you have to apply into the applied arts concentration to get the ADT benefit. Once you're in San Diego State, you can switch your concentration to a different concentration once you're there, but we want you to use this ADT benefit to help you get into these impacted campuses So this is something to be aware of and cautious about when you are working on these applications. And if you have any questions about this, I do recommend meeting with your counselor at your community college so that they can help you with this. And I'm going to actually pull up this link now and drop this hyperlink in the chat for you all. That way you have access to this screen page or this website that we're looking at right here to double check your ADTs. So for anything listed on here, you should not be getting that pop-up box. If you are, contact your community college transfer center and let them know, because they can reach out to Cal State Apply and get that fixed. We've had issues with that where we've had to intercede for students and help get that fixed with community colleges that are erroneously giving that pop-up box. Another pop-up box that you might see says alternate program required. Now this gives you the option of an applicant or the requirement of choosing a second choice major for that CSU. I always recommend choosing an alternate major, because if you're not admitted for your first major, your application can be redirected to your second choice major, and then you could be admitted for that second choice major at your CSU campus. So always choose an alternate when you can, and you can consult with your counselor on what would be a good choice if you're not sure what to choose as an alternate. Now, once you've chosen your campus, your starting campus, and added that major in there, you're going to be redirected to the homepage, the application homepage. And as you can see, this is what it looks like here. You've got these 4 quadrants that you're going to be working through on the application. And when these circles are still colored white, that you know there's still work to be done in there. When you are all finished with your application, each of these circles is going to be a dark green color. And at that point, you can submit your application. Now, 2 things to note about your application homepage. First is that under your name on the application, you will see a CAS ID number. There's a number there. You can't really see mine, it's so tiny, but that number is your Cal State Apply ID number. And if you reach out to Cal State Apply for help, they're going to ask you for that number. And then they can actually go in and look at your application and see the exact area that you have a question about. Also to note is this little blue circle with the question mark. That's the help center for the Cal State Apply application. And in there, they have a live chat feature. They also have emails that you can reach out for help, and very important guides that could answer the majority of your questions related to this application. So let's talk about quadrant 1. So this is the personal information quadrant, and most of these tiles will be pretty self-explanatory for you to fill out on your own. On the release statement tile, I do recommend checking all 3 of the boxes there, because that means that if need be, if there's an issue in the future with your application, your university transfer center at your community college can reach out to your CSU on your behalf, and your CSU reps can actually help as well with any application issues that arise. So it's important to check those 3 boxes on the release statement. The biographic information and contact information tiles are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to walk through those. But I do want to show you the citizenship and residency tile. And for our students that are U.S. citizens, you're just going to choose that selection. But I want to touch on this for our AB 540 or DACA or undocumented students. There is specific guidance from Cal State Apply on how to fill out this section accurately. So you're going to choose for U.S. citizenship, you'll choose none. You're going to put in your country of citizenship, the year you were born outside of the U.S. and what year you moved to the U.S. Then if you consider California your U.S. state and regard it as your permanent home state, you'll indicate that there. You'll indicate that you claim California residency as long as you've lived in California for at least 1 year and 1 day. And then you would select no for have you lived in California continuously since birth, and then when your present stay in California began. So this is specific guidance just for our AB 540 undocumented or DACA students on the citizenship residency tile. The race and ethnicity tile, I just want you to know that this is only used for statistical purposes. So this information is not used to make any admission decisions. It does not give you admission consideration in any way. It is also not used for financial aid eligibility. It is only so the CSU system can run data on what types of applicants applied from different ethnic and racial groups. And so it's only used for those data purposes, and it does not impact your admission in any way. The other information tile, it does ask for your social security number if you have one. If you do not, you just select no. It also asks on here for a statewide student ID number, or an SSID. Now, this is a number that was assigned to you if you went to a public high school in California, and you might see this on your high school transcript, but many cases, high schools don't print this on the high school transcript. So if you don't see it on there, don't worry about it. This is an optional entry. You do not have to enter that information into the application. You can leave it blank. And just so you know, this little red star here indicates something required on the application that you have to enter in. Anything that doesn't have that red star, like the SSID number, you don't have to enter that information. You can leave that blank, and it's not going to hurt you in any way. It asks your language proficiency, so your first language at home that was spoken in your home. And then it does ask if you've ever been on academic probation or dismissal, and you can select yes if you have, and then just explain it in the box below. Don't worry about it too much. I know a lot of students had some issues, especially during the COVID pandemic. So you would just write to that in the box so they understand what happened during that term. The financial and parental information tile, you're just going to read through these statements carefully here and indicate if none of them apply to you or one of them or more apply to you. And this will determine if you're a dependent or an independent. And then it's going to ask you information on your household size and income based on whether you're a dependent or an independent. Now, that information is only used to determine if you qualify for the fee waiver that's built into this application. If you do qualify, that means you're going to get 4 free applications to the CSU system. So we do want you to use those if you can qualify. So make sure you enter in this information accurately so that hopefully you can get that fee waiver. It also asks your parent and guardian education level. So you're going to report your parent's highest level of education. Now, this is used for determining if you can be eligible for the EOP program at CSU campuses. And some campuses actually do give a little bit of consideration for first-generation college students, which are students whose parents are not four-year college graduates. Quadrant 2 is academic history. In this section, this is where you're going to need those transcripts handy to fill out this information. You'll need your college transcripts, high school transcripts, and college board transcripts if you have AP exams. You're going to enter in your high school information, and then after that, you enter in your college information. You need to enter in all colleges attended. You need to enter in all degrees earned, including non-transfer associate degrees, transfer associate or AATs or ASTs, so associate degrees for transfer. You're going to enter all of those in here. If your major is not on the drop-down list of majors, just choose the closest match that you can find. You're going to indicate your first term of attendance and your last term of attendance at every college that you've been to. And you're going to want to check the box if you're still attending that college or university in your final year. The college coursework tile. Now, this is going to be where you're spending the most of your time on this application. And this is where you're going to want to be extra cautious and careful that you're making your entries correct. And in the Applicant Help Center link there, there's a guide called the Cal State Apply Transfer Application Guide. And we want you to use that guide if you have any questions. It's a 48-page guide that has the answers to almost all of your questions in it. For every term that you've attended, every college that you've attended, you're going to enter in the term, year, academic status, and if that term has been completed. You're going to enter in your grades in the courses and whether that course was a transferable course or not a transferable course. You're going to check the box if it is transferable and not check that box if it was not a transferable course. You're going to enter every course code as it appears on your transcript with no space in between the course name and number. And then you're going to see a drop-down list. If that course was taken at a California community college, you'll see a drop-down list with that course listed there if it was a transferable course. Now, if it was a non-transferable course or a course taken at an out-of-state community college or a private university or public university, then you have to manually enter that information in. You enter every single course that's on your transcript. And a tip is to use freshman status for your first 30 units of community college, and then anything 31 units and higher is going to be indicated as sophomore status on here. Technically, your junior year starts when you start at your university if you're an upper division transfer. You want to make sure that you enter every single course taken at every single college that you've attended. Even if you have a transcript from the past that you wish you could ignore, you are really required to report all college terms on this application. If you took a course while you were in high school at a community college, you are actually going to report that as well, as long as it was on your community college transcript. So you would report that first term, even if it was a term while you were in high school, as a college term for that college. So you can report that high school course. As long as it's on your college transcript, you report it on the application. For guidance on international credit, military credit, repeated courses, and academic renewals, please consult with the transfer application guide. And just to touch on the repeated and academic renewals, if you repeated a course at your community college and that repeat has been updated on the transcript, so you had a substandard grade, you repeated the same course, now you have a passing grade and it's noted on the transcript, you are going to note the first grade as an RP on this application entry. If you had an academic renewal at your community college and where you went through the paperwork and the process with your counselor to get your previous substandard grades academically renewed, and that's noted on your transcript, you're going to mark that as an AR on the application entry or the transcript entry. If you have a repeat or an academic renewal that's in process this fall term, it has not been noted yet on your transcript, then you are not going to be reporting that yet as an RP or an AR. You're actually going to report it as the grade that you received. But then when you log back into your application in January to do the academic update, you're going to be entering in your fall grades at that point in time. And if your repeat or your academic renewal has been processed, you can go back to that other term and change that grade from a substandard grade to an RP or an AR at that time. You want to make sure to enter in your in progress and planned classes for this final year, so your fall and spring courses. And if you're taking a short course, you're going to enter that as an interim course, because if that grade is already posted in the short course, if you had like a first 9-week course at your community college like we do at Cuesta, and the grade's been posted, you would enter it as interim 2022, and that way you can report that grade since it's already been posted. And then if you have a subject area that doesn't seem to have a perfect match, use special topics as your default if there is not a perfect match for you under the subject. Once you've entered all of your college coursework in there, you can calculate your transferable GPA, and you want to make sure that matches what you thought your GPA was. You also want to make sure your total transfer units earned is over the 60 if you're applying for upper division transfer. In the standardized test tile, you're going to be reporting your AP scores or your CLEP or your IB scores in there as well. And you're going to report every score 3 or higher. They also recommend that you do report any scores lower than a 3, even though we know that those aren't going to count for anything at the CSU. The last tile in this section is the general education tile, and this is screening for what's called the Golden 4 at the CSU system. So they want to make sure that you have a course selected for each of these 4 areas. If you're not sure about what those selections should be, consult with your counselor or check your GE pattern, because your CSU GE pattern at your community college will show you which options go into these areas, but you can choose from the drop-down list to make sure that you have the right course indicated for that GE area for the Golden 4. So the supporting information, quadrant 3. In this quadrant, you're going to have associate degree for transfer confirmation in there. So this is where it's going to show you that you've reported your associate degree for transfer. You're going to enter in your campus student ID number at your community college. You don't need to worry about the California Community College ID number, that's optional. But you do need to note your completion date for your associate degree for transfer. The second tile in there is for EOP. And if you are going to be applying into the EOP program at the CSU, which I do recommend all first-generation college students and low-income students apply into, it's a fantastic program. It offers deeper level support for students after transfer, which could involve academic advising, priority registration, free tutoring, in some cases, additional admissions consideration. So please do think about applying into the EOP program if you are in your EOP program at your community college, or if you think that this would be a good program for you. And you can research this out on the Cal State website for more information about EOP. I do want you to know that the EOP program application itself is a whole different application in the CSU application. It can take time and energy to fill that out. So you're going to want to carve out some good time for that EOP application. You will need 2 letters of recommendation for it. And for most CSU campuses, they give you till January 15th to fill out the EOP application. So you're going to want to check the dates and deadlines for submitting that EOP application. And if they extend that deadline past the November 30th deadline for submitting the application for CSU, you can actually go back in and finish that EOP application after submitting your CSU application out. Quadrant 4 is program materials, and each campus has a different tile within this quadrant. So every school that you've indicated that you're applying into is going to have a tile here. Some of these tiles are just information based, and they just give you information about that university. Some of them actually have questions that they want you to answer. So you'll just enter in that information that they ask in that tile. Once you've entered in all 4 of these quadrant areas, you're going to see 4 green circles there. And that means that you are done with the CSU application, and you're ready to make sure that you've added the right programs and submit your application. If there's any more programs that you want to add at that point, you can go back in and add any campuses. Otherwise, you can go right on to submit application. When you go into submit application, this is where you can see if you are earning that fee waiver. So you can check your fee waiver status to see if you get 4 applications for free. It will also auto adjust your total fee amount. And so if you don't get the fee waiver, it will be $70 per campus. You can submit your applications to each campus individually if you'd like to, or you can submit them all at the same time. But do know that once you've submitted one, you cannot go back in and change the majority of the information in those 4 quadrants. So you want to make sure everything is perfect before you submit your first application out. There is a review feature built into the application now where it's going to have you double check some things. You double check your total units and your GPA. If you've repeated any coursework, they have you double check your Golden 4 for your general education entry, and then any AP scores that you noted. So make sure everything looks good to go before submission. If you get a warning review pop-up page, this means that they're seeing that there's something that they think is wrong in your application. And I would consult with your counselor before proceeding on to submit your application if you do get this warning review. If you think that these were all actually accurate, then you can go on to continue to payment, but I would really consult with somebody before submitting if you get this warning. Now, it's important to note your campus deadlines. So impacted campuses do have a November 30th deadline. Those are the campuses listed in the left column. The right-hand column is non-impacted campuses, and you can actually check those campuses. They might have different application deadlines. So you're going to want to check on the Cal State Apply application dates and deadlines page to see exactly when that campus deadline is for those schools. But again, if you submit for the November 30th deadline for your impacted campuses, you cannot make changes to the application, but you can go in and add campuses that still have a later deadline after the November 30th date. All right, so that covers the CSU application. Now let's talk a little bit about the UC application. For the UC application, you're going to use the universityofcalifornia.edu website, and I'm going to drop that link for y'all in the chat. That is where you're going to find the application to get started, and you're going to start again by creating an account. So very similar to the CSU application, you're going to choose an email address that you check often, write down your username and your password. In this application, they do ask throughout these tiles in the About You section for your personal information. And this is usually pretty self-explanatory, filling these out. You're just going to be entering in the information that they request. Now on the citizenship and residency tile here, I do want to show any students that are undocumented, DACA or AB 540. If you click on the little blue circle with the I in it next to the question, it gives you information to explain more about that question. And on this tile specifically, it gives you guidance for undocumented students on how to fill out this page of the application. But for all of these, you're going to want to check that click on that little blue circle. If you have any question about what the application is asking you with the question, it clarifies, and they've really done a great job with this application and making those little information pop-up boxes cover the majority of questions that might be asked about it. You do enter in your social security number, and then it does ask if you've attended a California high school or school for 3 years. Now, this is when you're indicating what your application level is. This is very important in the application. You want to make sure that you're indicating that you're applying for fall, quarter, or semester of 2023, and that you are a transfer applicant. So you've already graduated from high school and you're going to be transferring into your university. When it asks what type of transfer applicant you are, most students are going to be choosing a junior level transfer. And regardless of how many credits you've completed at your community college, if you've only gone to a California community college, even if you've earned 150 units at that California community college, you are applying into your UC as a junior level transfer. So you're going to want to click on the junior level transfer circle there. Now, if somebody has less than 60 semester units, there are very limited options for sophomore level transfers. But if you're sure that you will have less than 60 completed by the end of spring term, you would indicate that. But I want to caution you that really the UC is looking for junior level transfers, meaning that you're going to have 60 or more UC transferable units completed by the end of spring 2023. If you have been to a university before and you have upper division coursework, or you've attended a UC before, you're going to want to consult with a counselor to make sure that you do not have a credit limitation on senior standing admission, because there is an issue when students have too many units from a university. It could bump you up into senior levels transfer standing. This is something to talk to your community college counselor about, and just make sure that you are applying in as a junior level transfer, as the majority of our students are. If you are applying as a senior level transfer or a high unit junior, then there is limited space available at CSU or at UCs, and many CSU campuses actually don't prefer students to be applying in at that level. So it's an important topic to consult with your counselor about. The household information tile. Now this again is screening for the fee waiver. So the information that you input in here about your income and who lives at the home address with you and how many people are supported by this income. This all is going to be used to determine if you get the UC application fee waiver. You can use those little information circles to read more in the pop-up box. It really clarifies nicely what type of information it's looking for the income information there. It does ask you about your parent education level. So again, screening to see if you're a first generation college student. And if you are, just know that at the UC system, 47% of students that attend a UC campus are first generation college students. So you will not be alone. It's almost half of the UC student body that is a first gen college student. After you've entered that information in, you're going to be directed to this page where you get to choose your campuses that you want to be applying to. But it's important to read in the little box here, because this is where it will tell you if you did qualify for the application fee waiver. And if you did, you're going to get 4 free applications to the UC system. So double check that. If you get the 4 free apps, at least choose 4 campuses so you can use all of those 4 free applications and use that fee waiver. After you've selected your campuses, you're going to choose your major at each of these campuses. And so some of these UCs will give you an option for an alternate major. If you do have that option, always choose an alternate major. That's guidance from the UC. They always want to give you a backup option to redirect your application to another major if you're not admitted at your first choice major. It's also good to review the preparation for your backup major to make sure that it's something similar to what you've prepared for your primary choice major as well, because if you're missing core requirements for that major, then you're not likely to be admitted for that one either. So use the alternate major when you can. Some schools do not offer alternate majors, so you would only be entering in your primary major. If you are going to be applying to UC San Diego, there's an important thing to know about when you apply into UC San Diego. The university itself is actually broken down into 8 different colleges that make up the UC San Diego campus. And you can see those colleges named here on the slide. Now, UC San Diego, it's a really cool way that they do it. Each college has its own philosophy. It also has its own living area and eating areas on campus. It has its own vibe. If you tour the campus, you'll see that the John Muir College area is very different from the Thurgood Marshall College area. So it's important to read about these on the UC San Diego website and try to get a feel for which colleges might appeal more to you. You do have to rank your colleges here, and then they're going to try to match you to a college that you've ranked most highly there. But it is important to know that 8th College, you're going to want to put that at the bottom of your list. They are not accepting transfer applicants into 8th College until 2025. And then Revel College, it's important to know that if you're completing your IGETC GE pattern, the IGETC does not clear all of Revel College's lower division GE requirements. Revel College actually requires a lot more science and math, which might be fine for you if you're a STEM major, because this is really a STEM focused college. But for anybody that wants to have that IGETC completed, you're going to want to prioritize one of these other colleges here instead. All right, so the UC TAP, now it asks you if you've been using the UC TAP, and if you have, you can import your information from your UC TAP into the UC app and save some time on the application. Now, sometimes I've worked with students where this does not easily happen. So the rule is that it's easier if you've used the same TAP email address as your UC application email address. And if you had your TAP open, you have to actually have that closed out. You can't have that open in another tab when you're trying to do this import. You have to have that closed. You have to be logged out of the TAP for over 24 hours for this import to be able to happen. So if you're having an issue with that, try logging out of the TAP, wait 24 hours, come back, try the import. And if it's still not working, then you're going to have to enter in the information. In the academic history section on the UC application, you want to make sure to enter all colleges you have attended, regardless of how long you attended, regardless of what grades you earned, or if you wanted to pretend that those don't exist anymore, you have to still report all colleges, all terms on this application. You want to enter the first term of attendance and the last term of attendance for every college that you've attended. You will only enter every college you've attended one time in here. So you always want to enter your college only once, even if you had a big gap in attendance while you were at that, during that time when you were at the school. If you took college courses while you're in high school, you want to report those terms also in your terms of attendance in here. They do ask if you've earned associate degrees, and for the UC system, it's important to know that associate degrees don't give you extra consideration for the UC system, but this is where you will note them in the application here. You're going to want to make sure to review the grade codes and use these to match the grades that are on your transcripts. You want to report all withdrawals, all grades that are posted on your transcript, any pass or no pass or credit or no credit classes, EWs if you had any. You're going to report any academic renewals with an AR, just as you would on the CSU application. If that academic renewal has been processed, you note it as an AR. If it's in progress, then you're going to have to wait and do that change when the January transfer academic update happens in January. So again, like with the CSU application, you're going to be logging back into your UC application in January, entering your fall grades, and you can make adjustments on any courses where you've had a repeat or an academic renewal then. Now for the UC application for repeats, if you've had a course repeat, you still have to enter your original first grade and second grade for the repeated course on there. But then the UC application notes that that is a repeat. So they won't actually enter that into your transferable GPA when it's run. You want to make sure that you take some time going through your transcript entry on your UC application. For California community colleges, you're going to see lists of the classes and programs offered at that community college there. You're going to want to check the box for the course that you took and then enter in the grade. So you're going to enter all of those courses in under one term there. Double check your credits and your grades for all of your classes. You will, if you don't see the drop downs list here and it's a course that was a non-transferable course or a course that you took at a university or out of state community college, then you're going to have to manually enter that information in. If you've had an enrollment gap, so a gap in your attendance list, so you took a semester off, the UC application asks you why, and it's perfectly fine. You're just going to explain in that box why you had an enrollment gap. So if you had to work, or maybe you were in high school and you took your first course and then you had 2 years before you actually started at community college, you would just write that in the box. You're going to want to be sure that you include your fall 22 in progress classes and your spring 23 planned classes to your course schedule or your transcript entry for your UC application. If you have already earned a grade in a course, so let's say it was a short course at your community college and your grade is earned, you can put that grade in there. Otherwise, all full-term courses are going to be noted as in progress and then planned. The UC application automatically it asks you about these minimum requirements. So it's going to ask you about the entry-level writing requirement. And if you have completed 2 UC English courses or 1 UC English course and an AP exam in English, then most likely you've met that English level or this entry-level writing requirement at your community college, and you'll indicate yes for that. If you've completed the IGETC pattern, that has that woven in, and you'll absolutely choose yes right there. Now, IGETC is not required for admission to UCs in most cases. So you will go ahead and indicate, though, if you are earning your IGETC or completing your IGETC for general education at your community college. If you're not completing IGETC, don't worry about it. Just check no there because, like I said, for most campuses, IGETC completion is not required for admission. The UC app screens to see if you have your 2 English courses that they're looking for minimum UC eligibility. And if they found those courses listed at a California community college, they're going to pop them in on this page of the application, and it's going to show you your 2 courses that you've taken that complete this UCE or UC English requirement for admission. Now, if it only enters in 1 course there, and you have your second course, but you think that course was from an out-of-state university or out-of-state community college or an in-state university, you're going to have to manually enter which course is meeting the second UCE requirement. It's also going to it's going to automatically input your university math requirement there if it was taken at a California community college. But if it doesn't auto-populate in there, then you're going to need to manually enter that in. Now, if you have an AP English, that you completed while you were in high school. You have an AP exam in English where you scored 3 or higher, and we know that counts as one of your UCE courses or UC English courses. Then you're going to see one course pop in that UC English area. And where it says, what is the status of your second course? You are actually going to choose none planned for that. This is through the guidance of the UC system. They tell you that's what they want students to pick, is none planned. But then it will bring up a box underneath that reassures you that that AP exam is actually going to be used to complete that second composition or second English requirement. It asks if you've ever been on academic probation, and you will need to report that if you have. It asks if you've been following a UC transfer pathway, and if you have at your community college, that you can indicate that there. You can use that link to read more about the UC transfer pathway and to see what community college coursework is required at your campus to meet a certain major pathway. You can take a look at that and see if you did complete all those courses. You can indicate that yes, you're earning that transfer pathway. But if you're not earning a transfer pathway, don't worry, it's okay to leave that blank. Many of our students at Cuesta College do not earn or follow a UC transfer pathway because it doesn't best match their goal for UC transfer. It asks about a California State student ID number. And if you have this on your high school transcript, you can enter that in there. But if you don't see it on there or you don't have that number, don't worry about it. That's an optional entry and you can leave that blank. Now, the additional comments box, this is an important one for the UCs. They like to give context to your transcript entry. So if you have had a term where you had some poor grades, you had some extra challenging situations going on, maybe at home, or something that happened, you had an accident or some medical issue that really impacted your academic history, write about that in the comments box. They want to see what happened during your transcript entry, all those terms that you've attended college, and what has had impact on your academics, if anything. So they have said to use this to write about any breaks in college attendance and why you might have taken a break, write about any poor grades or challenging circumstances. You can write about any courses that you had to repeat and why maybe it didn't go great the first time for you. Anything that impacted your educational performance, they want you to note in here. Now, note that this is limited to 550 characters, so you're going to need to be brief with this, but you will want to note each term that has been impacted. If you're not enrolled full-time from spring of 22 through spring of 23, so that's 3 terms, spring 22, fall of 22, and spring of 23, for UC Davis specifically, they want you to write why you were not a full-time student. So maybe you had to work part-time to support yourself, or you had other things going on, or you just didn't have that many units left to complete your transfer goals. But the UC Davis specifically wants that to be noted in this comments box. And just know the UC system does read this comments box. So if you had a term where you really struggled and it wasn't reflective of the rest of your academic performance, they will see that and they'll understand, and they actually do give that consideration. In the test score entry, you're going to enter in all AP scores that you've earned. So you're going to enter in your AP exams from your College Board transcript there. If you had any IB exams, TOEFL, IELTS exams, or international exams, you will also enter this into the test score area. Activities and awards. So this is a fun place on the UC application to talk about all the things you do with your free time. So the UC wants to get to know you better as an applicant. They want to know what you do with your time outside of the classroom. So they give you the opportunity to write about different things in here, and you have the opportunity to list up to 20 activities and awards. Now, this is a great way to explain if you've been working while you were in college. You'll want to write about that in here and explain your work experience. And this could be any paid jobs or paid internships that you've had. You can write about that in work experience. You can write about any awards or honors that you've earned, if you've earned any at your community college. Any educational preparation programs that you've been involved in at your community college that have helped you prepare for transfer. any extracurricular activities that you've done. So this could be hobbies. So let's say you're an avid surfer and you love to surf and you spend 8 hours a week surfing. Write about that. If you've taught other people how to surf or worked at a surf camp teaching others how to surf, write about that in there. If you're a piano player and you practice 10 hours a week and you've performed recitals, write about that. They want to get to know these activities and interests that you have. If you've been involved in any clubs, play any sports, you can write about that in there as well. Now, you can also write about if you care for siblings or children, or if you care for any elderly family members or do elder care. The UC actually says they'd like to know about that as well, how you're helping out with your family if you've had to drive your parents to medical appointments while they're battling cancer, things like that. They want to know what you do to spend your time, and they give you, this gives them context too about what you've had on your plate while you were completing your academics at your community college. You can write about any research projects you've been involved in, any volunteering or community service work that you've done, or unpaid internships. You can add that in there as well. So please think about this and really add in some things in here to give this UC some idea of who you are as a student. And I'll really tell you that if we're talking about, if you're interested in UCLA or UC Berkeley, leadership is huge to them. So write to leadership examples of times when you've been a leader in any of these types of activities. Berkeley specifically says that they really like to see leadership listed in here. And they want you to focus on post-high school activities. But if you've, in the past 2 or 3 years, if you were still in high school, you can also write to your high school activities that you were involved in your junior and senior year after you put in your community college activities, if you have those as well in your recent past. The scholarships and programs. So we want you to click on as many boxes for this as you can, because this will redirect your information to potential scholarships, which is free money to help you pay for the UC system. You also want to remember to fill out your FAFSA. So that's your free application for student aid. And you need to do that by March 2nd. That's the priority deadline each year for the following year. So fill out that FAFSA. It's the 23-24 FAFSA. It's open now and you can work on it and complete that now. But be sure to have that filled out by the March 2nd deadline so that you can be in the running for any grants or scholarships at the UC system. Now, another part of this application is the personal insight questions. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit more about these PIQs, as the UC refers to them. So this is another way for your UC campuses to get to know you as an applicant. And we know that 4 of our UC campuses really use these PIQs in learning to get to know you or learning about you as an applicant. So when we're talking about UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, and UC Irvine, we know that these PIQs are very important to those campuses. There are 8 personal insight questions. One of those questions is a required question for all transfer applicants. So you're going to have to write about that one. And that asks you to describe how you've prepared for your intended major at the UC, including your readiness to succeed in your upper division courses once you enroll in the university. So very focused on what you've done to prepare for your major and how you're going to be ready to succeed at the UC. Now, you're also going to choose 3 other personal insight questions from the list of 7 options that they give you. You get to choose the best fits for you. Now, each write-up has a 350 word limit for your response. So you can see this is a shorter essay. This is not a long, involved essay. It's a shorter essay. So you want to be clear and concise and really get your point across with the word count that you have. We want you to choose the questions from those 7 options that let you demonstrate diverse aspects of your personality and who you are as an applicant in a very complimentary way. So you want to write to your strengths. You're going to let things about yourself shine in this. You don't be okay with bragging a little bit and letting that UC know why you're such an amazing student and applicant. And just to give you some context on how important these are to Berkeley and UCLA, UC Berkeley actually states on their website that the PIQs are the most important part of your application to them. They really take these into consideration, and they review these are not only reviewed by the admissions office, but they're also reviewed by the scholarship offices as well. So here's a screenshot of the guidance on the PIQs that's embedded into the application itself. So this is what you're going to see when you open up that PIQ section of the application. And as it says in here, there's no right or wrong answers here. This is about you and your life. But they do want you to present your information in a very focused and thoughtful way. They don't want you to make lists or bullet points in there. They want you to write it up in a very thoughtful way. They want you to also use specific concrete examples in your writing. Focus more your examples on the present and the near past. Okay, so you don't want to reach too far back in your history. Keep it more focused on your near past. They want to get to know about your triumphs and challenges in life, leadership opportunities. There's the leadership word again, experiences outside of the classroom. They want this to be written in your own voice. So your writing should reflect your ideas and be written by you alone. I want to caution you that the UC stresses over and over again in their personal insight question workshops that they do use software to scan for borrowed PIQ writings. So if you actually, use somebody else's personal insight question, they screen for that. And if you're caught, you will be disqualified from applying to the UC system. So it's very important that you are writing this in your own voice and that this is written by you. Bring a relaxed voice into this as well. And just know that your admissions decision is not going to be based alone on your PIQ responses. But for students who are in that kind of middle zone where their academics is kind of there, these PIQs can move you from that middle zone to absolutely being admitted. So here's some more PIQ tips from UC Berkeley, because we know that these are so important to Berkeley. So they say, choose your PIQs wisely. Choose questions that will allow you to answer, to write answers that will emphasize your strengths. So you don't want to write about things from a victimized approach. If you've had challenging things happen in your past, you want to actually write to any triumphs or strengths that resulted from those hardships. You don't want to repeat information. So you don't want to use 3 different PIQs to touch on the same topic over and over again. They want you to use those PIQs to write about 3 completely separate things that really show off who you are and your strengths as an individual. Berkeley recommends outlining your responses, and I think this is a great approach. If you're not sure how to get started, write a rough outline for each of the PIQs that you think might be a good fit for you, and then see which of your outlines seem to be the most robust and the most fluid for you to write. And then you can kind of choose your 3 that way. You want to spend a good amount of time organizing your thoughts on this and writing it up in a clear way. But they also want you to craft a story into it. So they want you to share compelling and connected stories. So when you're writing your PIQ, you're not just going to be writing about how you're passionate about something. You're going to be weaving in some concrete examples of that. You're going to make it have some story woven into that, so they can actually see examples of how this has been such an interest to you, or how this situation has been influenced by something in your life. You want to engage the reader with your write-ups, and you want to draw them in, and you really want to impress them with your writing. Again, write to leadership, optimism despite setbacks, any entrepreneurial efforts that you might have undertaken. So for example, I had a student who started a grocery delivery service for some elderly folks in her neighborhood during the pandemic. And this is a wonderful thing to weave into a PIQ to show how that student was a self-starter and also trying to do good in her community. I also had another student who created an app to help others sell clothing online. So that was something that she wrote about in a PIQ. So these entrepreneurial things that kind of set you apart from other students are great to write about as well. Then Berkeley recommends that you tie it all together. So you've got these 4 different write-ups on 4 different questions. They want you to weave it together with a central message that's coming through about you as a person, whether that message is something related to your values or your strengths. Maybe it's your community involvement, maybe it is your dedication to your academic pursuits, but let each of those PIQs kind of reflect in a different way that central message that you're trying to get across to your UC readers. One last tip on the PIQs. They always recommend having those questions emailed to you. Don't write your PIQs in the application. Not a good way to go, because if you accidentally submit or they get wiped out, if you don't save them in there, then you have to start over again. So have them email you the questions, copy those onto a Word document or a Google Doc where it auto saves as you work on your progress. That way you can write them, perfect them, polish them up in that Word doc or Google Doc, and then copy and paste them back into the application when they're ready to go. I know some campuses, like at Cuesta, the Writing Center can review your PIQs for you and give you some guidance and feedback, so you can check and see if that's an option for you at your campus. Now, at the end of the personal insight questions section, there is an additional comments box for your PIQs. Now, this is another place where you can give them, the reader, more information about yourself in here that you have not already expressed anywhere or presented anywhere in the application. So you're not going to write to anything you've already talked about in the additional comments box related to your academic information. You're not going to write anything more about anything you've already written about in a PIQ. And you're not going to use this box to answer another PIQ. They don't want you to do that. But they do want you to use this box to explain any hardships, family circumstances, or anything else that you haven't had the opportunity to explain somewhere else in the application. So let me give you an example for that. I had a student who has had the challenge of being dyslexic their entire life, and it really impacted their academics in high school. But then they've worked hard. They went through some programs to kind of help get a hold on the dyslexia, but it's still always been an issue when they read their textbooks. This is a place where you can share that information with your UC readers so that they understand that, wow, this student not only got straight A's or a really strong GPA, but wow, they also have had to, this challenge of having dyslexia while they've gone through this academic journey. So that would be the place to write about these sorts of situations that relate to yourself that you haven't already talked about anywhere else in the application. So think about using this to give the UC any other information that you want them to get to know about you. Now, once you are done, you will see on the review and submit page here, you're going to see check marks all the way down the line, and that means everything is set and ready to go. If you don't have a check mark, that means you've got something to fill out or complete in that area. You need to go back in and double check it before you can start your submission. I always recommend going back through your application at least once or twice, review it for accuracy before submission. Go to your university transfer center, ask them questions and get all those questions answered before you submit, because once you submit, you cannot go back in and make changes. Now, the deadline to submit for the UC system is November 30th. And again, I recommend trying to get those apps out by mid-November so you're not dealing with those platform issues towards the end of the month of November. Now, after submitting your applications, you send them out. They're done, they're perfected. You're so relieved to get them out there and completed. What happens after that? Well, you're going to check your email often. Your UCs and CSUs are going to be reaching out to you by email and telling you about any next steps that you might have to do. And some of those schools might want you to create a portal login. So you would be actually creating an account and a login for your Cal Poly portal or your UC Berkeley portal, where you can go in and find out more information from that school about anything that they want you to be aware of. For both your CSU and your UC applications, I touched on this once, but this is so important. You're going to log back into that application in January for the transfer application update. So you're going to be entering your fall grades in to the application for both your CSU and your UC apps. You're going to put all those fall grades in there, and you're going to confirm your spring 23 schedule. Once that has been processed, that's when the majority of schools start processing the applications, the impacted campuses. They wait for that information. Now, in January, you're also going to have supplemental applications if you're applying to UC Berkeley, San Diego State, San Jose State, Long Beach, and potentially other CSU campuses as well for certain majors. So you're going to check your emails, because in January, that supplemental app is a critical step for those schools. If you miss your supplemental app, you will be denied admission. So make sure to take note of that and keep an eye on your email in January, because they will be reaching out to you repeatedly about filling out these supplemental applications. Now, admissions decisions are usually sent out between December at the very, very earliest, and that would be some of the CSUs that are less impacted that would be early admitting in December, but they will be sent through April of 23, depending on your campus. Most of our UCs notify in mid to late April. Cal Poly slow, it's usually the first week of March that you'd be notified in your portal. Now, you're going to be sending transcripts, but only when your university requests them. So keep an eye on your emails, because if they ask in that email for you to send a transcript, we don't want you to miss that. And we do have some CSUs that do request transcripts. So I believe it's Cal State San Marcos and Fresno State that typically do request transcripts in early spring. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep your eye on those emails and don't miss that. If it's down at the bottom of that email, we want to make sure that you don't miss a transcript deadline. All right, so we made it through in just over an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you so much for your attendance today, and I hope you found this information to be helpful. Now is when I want to just kind of pause from the presentation and talk about any questions that you might have for me. So feel free to enter any questions into the chat if you want to ask questions in the chat. I will go ahead and keep my eye on the chat. If you feel like you've gotten all the information that you need, though, from the presentation, then I want to thank you again for attending, and good luck with your applications. I wish you all the very best with your transfer. You can feel free to leave the meeting at any time. But for those of you that do want to stick around and chat or ask questions, feel free to do so now. And you can also unmute if you want to ask your question directly. All right, I'm not seeing any questions.